Rolling. 3, 2, 1. Action. Welcome to the Hóčhoka podcast.
Hello, Mitakiepi, and welcome to Hóčhoka here at the center of St. Joseph's Indian School campus. I'm Scott Wooster. I'm joined by Hope McCloskey. Today, the two of us host Joseph Marshall III, the award-winning author of 18 books. He's a cultural and historical consultant. He's a teacher, craftsman, administrator, actor, and a public speaker. He joins us to tape for a series directed primarily to our families about the vital task of reinvigorating the cultural identity of Lakota youth. In this podcast, we learn about Sitting Bull's vision and cultural identity. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us today. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
All right, so I'm going to go with a heavy hitter with this question here.
Okay.
Sitting Bull's vision before Greasy Grass is huge.
Yes.
Can you tell a little bit about the vision, and then can you tell your interpretation of it? And maybe that's one question. And then can you tell what that might impart to today's Lakota youth and what that might mean to them?
Well, I sure give it a try.
All right.
Probably at least a month before the Battle of the Greasy Grass, or the Little Bighorn, which of course was in June of 1876, Sitting Bull did a Sundance, and which was unusual because it was in the spring, and Sundances don't usually happen until midsummer. But he felt that the situation was important enough, I'm sure, that something like this was obviously warranted. And so he did all the usual protocols. He offered 50 pieces of flesh from each arm for the Sundance. And during the Sundance, sometime in the process, he had a vision. He went into a trance and had a vision. And in his vision, he saw literally men and horses, cavalry soldiers, or long knives, as we call them, milahaska, falling from the sky, upside down, into the circle of a Lakota encampment. That was basically his vision. And so he reported his vision to everybody who was there, especially to the other elders. And of course, there were immediate reactions to what the vision might mean. And everybody the consensus was that this foretold a victory over the Long Knives, because the soldiers and their horses were falling from the sky, bloodied, and obviously having been in battle. And somewhere in that, he heard a voice. And I don't know the words exactly, but that voice said to Sitting Bull, I give you these because they have no ears, and do not take anything that belongs to them. And so, of course, he reported all that too. And it just so happened that probably a week or two later, sometime later, before they got to Greasy Grass, while the village was still on what's called Ash Creek, scouts came from the south, meaning at the time in Wyoming. They were looking for enemies in Wyoming, and reported a large column of soldiers and native allies coming north toward them, toward these people, toward the Lakota, and some of the Cheyenne and Arapaho that were with them. And this was a large body of soldiers. I mean, several hundred, if not 1,000 or so. And so the scouts went directly to Crazy Horse, because Crazy Horse at that time was the overall military leader. Sitting Bull was probably the overall political leader at the time. So the scouts reported to Crazy Horse what they had seen. And so Crazy Horse gathered warriors and went to meet the enemy and fought them in a battle, a day-long battle, near the town where Sheridan, Wyoming is now. We call it the battle where the girl saved her mother, or her brother, the Cheyenne girl. Her name was, I think, well, I can't remember her name, but she rode into battle as several women did with their husbands or their brothers or their whatever. They were part of it, and they fought just as much as the men did. Her brother, who was a Cheyenne leader, had his horse shot from under him, and he was caught in a crossfire between two groups of soldiers. So this young girl, probably 18, 19, 20 years old, was on her horse. She rode in the middle of the crossfire and rescued her brother and rode out with him. So that's why we call the battle where the girl rescued her brother. It's otherwise known as the Rosebud Battle that occurred on June 17th. And so everybody thought, well, that's Sitting Bull's vision coming true. But a lot of the older people felt that that wasn't it, because in Sitting Bull's vision, the soldiers were coming into a Lakota camp. And Crazy Horse took his warriors 50 miles to face the enemy. So there was a lot of discussion about that. And of course, about a week later comes, Custer and the 7th Cavalry to attack the encampment that had reached Greasy Grass. And everybody thought that was those same soldiers coming back and attacking, which was not the case, obviously. But the interesting part of that, the Greasy Grass battle, was that in the initial attack on the south end of the camp, there was a long, 2-mile encampment along the Greasy Grass River. The first column of soldiers attacked from the south, and they rode in a column formation until their commander gave them order to form a skirmish line to face the oncoming warriors who were coming out of the village. 2 or 3 of the soldiers' horses ran away with them, the soldiers on them, and into the village. And the soldiers couldn't control their horses, so they took them right into the village, and they were taken down by people and killed in the village. So later on, that people realized, oh, this was the vision that Sitting Bull was talking about, where the soldiers were coming to our village. So of course, the battle occurred. It was 3 engagements over 2 days, and during the battle, the warriors, the Lakota Cheyenne warriors, would pick up weapons that the soldiers had discarded, pistols, guns, because among us we had a variety of weapons, but not consistent the way the Army did. The Army had the same rifle. Each man had the same rifle. Each man had a 6-shot revolver, and each soldier had available to him 125 rounds of ammunition. That was not the case with us. Mm-hmm. We had all kinds of weapons, mostly flintlocks, and a limited supply of powder and bullets. So a lot of our warriors went into battle with nothing but bows and arrows. And a lot is made about in history by white historians about that fact, saying that the only way that the 7th Cavalry was defeated because of the overwhelming firepower of the Lakota and Cheyenne, not to mention overwhelming numbers, which history has proven was not the case. Mm-hmm. But, as I said, during the battle, they picked up the guns and the bullets that soldiers had discarded, or from dead bodies. And then after the battle, they stripped especially the 5 companies under Custer's direct command, they stripped their bodies of clothing. And a lot of people now, and later on afterwards, debated about whether or not they should have done that. Because the vision said, do not take anything of theirs. Whether they meant that literally, You know, the objects, the guns, the clothing, the bullets, or whatever else they took. Or some people said, well, maybe what they meant was, don't take on their ways. Don't take on their thinking. There's always been a debate about that. And as a kid, I listened to old people talk about that, debate back and forth. Well, this is what Sitting Bull meant. He meant that we should have left those guns and bullets alone. We shouldn't have touched them. And other people would say, no. That's not what he meant. It meant that we shouldn't be like them. We shouldn't take on their ways. We shouldn't think like them. So there was a divided camp over what that vision exactly meant. But when you stop to think about it, because we have taken on their ways, as it were, we speak English, we dress like them. There's some of the things we can't avoid, because things change. But when we start accepting their religion, we start accepting their lifestyle, then we're taking on their ways. And a lot of people think that we should not have done that. We shouldn't do that. We should, maintain who we are as a group of people. So it all depends on which of those arguments you buy into.
Right.
It's still an interesting argument.
Right. And as a kid, to hear that argument from people who were closer to it, at least anyway, must have been fascinating.
Right.
And you ended up writing an entire book just about the battle, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the name of that was?
Is The Day That World Ended at Little Big Horn.
Yeah.
Right.
And I read that quite a long time ago. But if anybody ever wants a very in-depth look at that battle, that's a great resource, a great book for that. The last part of that question was, what message does it have for today's Lakota? And I don't know if we answered that or if we need to go more directly with it.
Like I said, it all depends on which of those arguments you buy into.
Yeah.
Whether it was just literally just physical objects or the ways of the white people. But the fact remains, whatever argument you adhere to, we have lost a lot of our culture through acculturation and assimilation. Some of that was forced on us. There's no getting away from that. Boarding schools, you talked about boarding schools, and the one thing they did, among a lot of other things, was they didn't allow us to speak our language. Kids who went to school were forbidden to speak Lakota or whatever other indigenous language. So, we did take on their ways, whether we like it or not. So the more of their ways we took on, the more we gave up of ourselves. So I philosophically, I sort of lean toward don't take their ways. I think that's what he meant.
Yeah. And I look at it as working here at St. Joe's. I've been here 28 years now. And I think it's so important that we as an organization take every opportunity to make sure that the kids have that pathway to find those kinds of things, and that we find people who can continue to teach those things and find a way to get it to the kids. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I know that as an alumni of St. Joe's, I've learned a lot from here, from like teachers and classes and other extracurricular activities that they have going on here, and things at home that my grandparents, that my mom, and just overall like environment have taught me. And I mentioned this during the break that since I'm away at school and I'm not in an environment where they culture Lakota and I guess just that sense of identity, and I'm away from home, that it's harder to grasp on that identity and learn more and to keep those that knowledge relevant, because at my school they don't have a big Lakota population. They don't have a big American Indian population. There's probably 10 of us on campus, including me, which is, it's hard to relate to other people, especially, like I have a different background than even most American Indian kids, Native American kids, because I went to a boarding school and most of them have stayed on the reservations. But I know that I've learned a lot from this talk. Like I just remember that story of where the girl saves her brother. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
learned that so long ago. And when he mentioned it, I was like, oh my God, I know that story.
Right.
What a surprise. I actually
Right.
know something. And so it's just, yeah, it's hard because I've said before that there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of
There
things
is.
kind of keeping a lot of Lakota people from maintaining the culture, and I've been introduced to a lot of things, but I know that there's some things that I will forever grasp on from my culture, my identity.
Mm.
Like the way I look, for one, is something that I'll never be able to let go of, nor will I ever want to.
Right.
And just my spirituality is never going to change. Like I still believe in Tunkashila. I still believe what's going to happen to me and my family as long as we progress. Like the way we keep things is it's going to be beneficial to all of us. I know that and I believe that. So but I don't know how other people are being taught as well,
Mm.
because I've never talked to like somebody in school and said, what do you do at home? Like, do you
Yeah.
go to Sundance? What do your grandparents
Right.
teach you? I've never thought to have those conversations with people my age that come from Lakota backgrounds. It's never been a thing that I would want to bring up either, because it feels so intrusive. But I feel like maybe at some point I would have to, just say, how much do you know about our culture? But I know that as an undergrad student who's nearing the end of her 4 years, I have a lot to consider from this conversation alone, from just this one little snippet of talk right now versus all the other things we've talked about today.
Right.
And so I know that I'm looking forward to the next part of this conversation and seeing what I do know and what I don't know and what I should learn.
Joseph, once again, thank you for joining us here in the Hóčhoka at the center of St. Joseph's Indian School campus, where we talk about issues central to Native America today. Until next time, stay centered.